And we are now going all the way across the Atlantic to Scotland, and we're going to have a chat with Michaela Foster-March. Good morning, Michaela.
Good morning, Austin. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you indeed, and happy Thanksgiving to you. And you and I know you don't celebrate it over there, but then again, you can, given that you're over there, you can celebrate our Thanksgiving and American Thanksgiving and every other Thanksgiving as well.
That's exactly what I plan to do.
And we've talked to you before, and we've been lucky to have you here on the show, and you talked to us about your music, because you've lived here in Ottawa for a long number of years, and then you went back to Scotland, and you are a songwriter and singer, but now you've crossed over also where you're getting into the world of being an author, and you're about to publish your first book, The Matoke Tree.
Matoke Tree, yes.
Matoke Tree. Tell us a bit of the background and bring us up to speed on this.
Well, it's a fictional novel, basically sort of passion and grief set against a backdrop that stretches from Uganda to Scotland and back again. And I've sort of set it out in 3 parts, covering themes such as love, war, ethnic cleansing, religion, adoption's a big part of it, and race. But although it is a fictional novel, I have first-hand knowledge of a lot of the subject matter.
Right.
My personal background, as you know, Austin, was as a daughter of the manse. My late father was a minister of the Church of Scotland, who had a rather colourful liberal background, let's say, in contrast to the sometimes oppressive religious bigotry held in so many countries. And my late brother was Ugandan, and he was adopted into our family as an infant at the same age as myself in the late 60s. And his mother reluctantly gave him up for adoption due to religious oppression within her own country, and returned to Uganda just before the Idi Amin takeover. But sadly, my brother died tragically in a fire in Glasgow at the age of 26. And I guess really the book sort of stemmed from that loss, and imagining also his mother's loss and having to give him up for adoption and what she returned to. So that's the kind of background of the novel.
Right. Now, I know, as I said in the intro there, you've written songs, and writing a song is trying to get a complete story into 3 minutes or 4 minutes. Whereas here you're taking, you have the flexibility to go into detail and to build the story, build a character, build the scene, build everything. Before we get a little more into the book itself, that exercise in itself, did you find that much of a different, you must have found it a different skill set required and a different challenge?
Oh, yeah. I don't think I realised what I was taking on when I decided to do this. As you know, my music is very lyrically driven. So in a sense, it was a natural progression. I like to talk a lot, and I had a lot to say, and I think the song was just limiting me too much. I really wanted to get my teeth into it and use my imagination.
And when you said that the song was limiting you, as this does give you the ability to expand on characters, and you say now that the book it's in 3 parts. So you didn't come out and write to start off with what would be a relatively light piece that would maybe run 100, 120 pages. You went in at the deep end. And
I did.
You went... How long did this take?
Almost 3 years.
Right.
And I think probably a lot of that time was taken up with a lot of research. I mean, although Frankie was Ugandan, he was Scottish through and through. He didn't embrace his Ugandan heritage. Very sadly, just before he died, he'd written to my father requesting more information about his adoptive parents rather. But when we were younger, we were offered information, and Frankie didn't really want to know anything about his family and was quite negative towards it. And I think when I came across the letter, that also was a big impetus for me to start the novel, to sort of research his Ugandan heritage and to find out more about it. And of course, once I opened it, it was like opening Pandora's box. And then, the research just sort of took over, and I started to have to interview people and, travelled a fair bit to do so, just to sort of, I think that the people that I interviewed are highly significant to the authenticity of the novel, and they lived through a lot of the troubles and a lot of that time. So that was interesting.
So in your research then, Michaela, in doing and travelling and in interviewing, did you find, and you must have found, situations and stories being related to you that, first of all, were horrific, and secondly, that left you emotionally drained?
Totally. There's been a few people have read the book, and they all mention that there's quite a bit of violence in the novel. And I mean, myself, I've got no time for gratuitous violence, but at the same time, I wanted to get across that, war sort of brings out the best and the worst in people, and I hope that I use it to show that. We've been bombarded by man's inhumanity towards man at the moment. It's coming at us in all forms of multimedia. The negative energy of these messages, I think, are affecting us at a deeply subconscious level. So much that we're almost ambivalent to the atrocities. But I think there's an intimacy when you're reading, and I hope that, although there is some violence in the book, that I think that I'm hoping that people can see that, for every atrocity that's committed, there are people out there showing enormous compassion, courage, integrity, healing, enormous resilience of the human spirit, man at its finest. So I hope that I managed to do, justice to that in the book. Show that brings out, war is bringing out the best and the worst.
In doing the research and then having grown up with your adoptive brother, did the research in any way explain or answer what might have been unanswered questions for you? And did you find that, given his Ugandan background, that there was an innate difference between you and between him and what would have been a Scottish born to a Scottish parents?
Yeah, I mean, I found out so much about Frankie's background, which I didn't expect to find out, and also there was a deep sadness about his mother having had to give him up. Her own father was a pastor in Uganda, and still today, if a woman has a child out of wedlock, it's considered, it's just a terribly shameful thing. But for her to have had a child out of wedlock and be a pastor's daughter, she could not possibly have gone back to Uganda under those circumstances with an illegitimate child. I mean, she may even have been murdered. It would have been that terrible for the family, so shameful for them. And in the research, I found out all of these things, and I even discovered where his grandfather preached. I went to interview one of the headmistresses of the Gaza High School in Uganda, and it turned out that in the conversation, I took the adoption papers with me, and she read the name, Webugira, and she said, that's a very unusual African name, and I said, yes, I understand that, but I've been trying to do some research on the name. And she said she knew the name, and she couldn't remember where she knew the name from. Now, this lady's in her 80s now. And about 2 weeks later, she emailed me to tell me that she had remembered where the name came from, and it was actually that he had actually been the pastor of the Gaza High School. So I was uncovering things all the way along that were personal, but also, honoured other people who were living through, a very, very difficult time in Ugandan history.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, the book itself has to make its way to the publisher yet?
It does, yes. I am just starting that process now.
And what are you hoping to, or what timelines are you hoping to be able to achieve on that?
Well, I mean, the publishing world, I think, is going through what the music industry went through about 10 years ago. There's a lot of changes in the publishing industry. And it's very, very difficult to get published today, but I'm hopeful that, I'll be able to hopefully knock on a few doors and see where that leads. It's with an agent at the moment, and I just have to keep my fingers crossed that they can see the potential in the novel.
Right. And when you say it's like the music industry was 10 years ago and it's difficult, it's, we've seen movies out there where people kind of submit manuscripts to numerous publishers and someone takes it home and reads it over the weekend and comes back and either accepts rejects it and you get the rejection letter in the mail. Is that the reality?
It is the reality. I mean, there's lots of published authors who can say they could plaster their walls with rejection slips, and I think it's just part of the process. I'm not afraid of that. I know that it is part of it. I hope there won't be too many, obviously, but you just never know. But I think where the changes are in regards to the music business, it's the downloading now. It's never been easier to self-publish, in a sense. So at least in the same way as artists can be independent now and don't necessarily need the big record companies, the same thing is happening in the publishing world. I think maybe the advantage to myself is that I'm sort of used to doing a lot of the sort of promo as a musician, as a singer-songwriter, and it's a similar process, I think, nowadays with an author. I think gone are the days where the author can sit at home, write the novel, and you know, that's the end of it. They have to be out there and be doing interviews and blog sites and, you know, working the internet and attending a lot of book festivals, in much the same way as we as musicians would be doing in order to promote our CD. So, you know, it's pretty new, really, to the book industry.
Right. Well, Michaela, we're going to have to wrap it up there, but we are going to listen to one of your pieces of music, and it's appropriately named because it's from your more recent CD, Seriously Red, and it's Tell Me Why, and that's what we've been chatting with you. You've been telling me why. And I said the Seriously Red is out there. You've had that out now, what, about a year? Is it nearly 2 years? Or year now?
Nearly. It doesn't seem like that.
I know. Well, this is Michaela Foster Marsh, and thanks a million, Michaela, for coming on the show. And from her CD, Seriously Red, Tell Me Why.